Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. You guys sure love B2B, because if it was between drinks and listening to a session, I would have been there. So thank you for being here. I don't know what you're looking for, but hopefully we provide you what that is. Second thing is, you probably noticed on the screen, if you're listening, there is actually a lag between what I say. So if you're trying to follow on the screen, it's probably a little unnerving if you see that. And the second funny anecdote that I'd say is like, so how did we land up holding you back from drinks? So I was negotiating with MPE for the session. Obviously, being in B2B acceptance, my responsibility was to make sure that we pay them on commercial cards. They said, if you're going to force us to pay on commercial cards, we'll get you a very attractive time slot, and it's called the witching hour. So here we are at 4:45 or 5 o'clock because Paul ate 10 minutes. So with that, a quick introduction on myself. So I head B2B acceptance globally for Visa. My responsibility and focus is to help build the supplier side network of the Visa commercial cards platform globally. So I partner with merchants, fintechs, service providers on product, solutions, innovations around acceptance, as well as with merchants around sales and partnerships. I've been doing that for about 15 years now. And we have a team spread around globally, so trying to really conjure up our network and grow the awareness around the value that potentially another rail has, especially for the needs around it. So today's environment, it's challenging. All of you who are either service providers or corporates, right, are experiencing this challenge. You know, the interest rates are rising. Obviously, some banks have pulled back a little bit, but still most countries are on a high interest rate environment. You know, there is uncertainty. Every day you pick up a newspaper, it has something around, or digital paper, most of us read digital these days, that, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. Supply chains have got complex. Think about what's happening in the Middle East. Think about what's happening on the Panama side, right, as well as Asia. The supply chain is getting complex, right, and it's driving a lot of uncertainty in what's happening in the world. And then the third, and if you walk on the floor today, right, fraudulent payments. There are so many business providers out here, service providers, some of you here, which are talking about, you know, how do we actually reduce risk and how do we actually reduce fraud? It's actually, you know, prevalent in entire business that we do today. It's actually become a pretty big cost of business. So how are we tracking that? So what Visa did was we actually launched a working capital index. Now, this is a framework that we partnered with payments.com to actually help you evaluate your partners, or if you're a corporate, your own, right, best benchmark or assessment of how you are doing on the leverage and use of working capital. This is something that's available for you all publicly. You folks can go out on it. It's a dynamic report. You can fill in a few questions on a survey. It'll help you assess your own utilization of working capital as a tool. It's a benchmarking calculator, and especially for growth corporates, it's actually a very insightful tool on what elements are actually other growth corporates who are driving double-digit growth in their business revenues, right, leveraging to actually support that growth. So some of the key anecdotes around from it, right? So first is, one of the big things we've seen, and we've done this for 2 years, is the growth or increase in use of working capital. So we've seen about a 20+ percentage point increase in the use of working capital. Now, if I'm a treasurer in your shoes, I'm saying, who were these 30% people who were not using working capital, right? How can you actually run a business? That's the question I had in my hand. But I'm sure if it was one of you who said no, thank you for now starting to move there. But the interesting thing was that most folks, corporates, still use traditional methods. Working capital loans, bank credit lines, and corporate overdrafts, equal to CDs or what we call overnight loans as well. Very traditional mechanisms. In the high interest rate environment, these have their own impacts as well in terms of availability, with availability of cash actually on decline, liquidity is on the decline, right? These actually have changed significantly in terms of their costs. So the question really becomes, what is some of the alternatives that we have, right? And these trends, by the way, are prevalent in Europe as well. You might say, hey, what have you seen? So we've done this survey now across regions. We've done it in Europe, Asia, North America, Latin America, right? And if I look specifically at Europe, what we've seen is that, it's still a traditional use environment. While 8 out of 10 corporates are continuing to use working capital tools, it's still the traditional loans that are there. And that's something for you all to think through. The insight, though, what we had is when we tracked the performance of these corporates on the use of their tools against their actual benchmark in the index, right? What we found that these traditional methods are only used by less than 10%, 5 or 6%, I think, yeah, who are actually the top growth performers. The top growth performers are actually innovating and using additional or newer age platforms and rails to actually drive value. So question for you all, right? And by show of hands, right? And it's interesting to see the response. Like, how many of you have actually, as a corporate, and all of you are corporates, thought about using commercial cards as a working capital solution? Anyone? No one? Actually can't see. Clearly no one. And it's actually reflective of what I experienced in Europe, by the way. Last year I was at Eurofinance and met with so many treasurers there. And me being on the acceptance side, I'm like, hey, do you accept card? He was like, what is card? I actually don't even use to pay it, right? And so it's a whole rail that's actually missing from the arsenal of corporates today. And as solution providers, fintechs, newer age companies that are coming in, right? Something that's actually been thought through as should be the case. In Europe, most of us actually feel that that's something that should not be included in our offerings, but the fact is that it's actually an important part that should be considered. So why is it one? And this is a shameless plug here, but I'll move on. I think Paul warned me not to do too much marketing. So I think, like, if you think about the business needs, right, of a corporate, the first and foremost is visibility over cash flow. Like, that's the number one. The number two is reduce costs and efficiency. If you look at all the sessions today, it's around how do I drive efficiency, how do I drive visibility. And then the third, I think that probably 30% or 40% of the providers out here today are focused on this. Majority of the sessions have been around how do I reduce risk, how do I reduce fraud, right? Those are like the big topics I can see from the sessions and from the people. All of these actually come with a cost. What you don't think is that you pay for a service here, you pay for a service there, you pay for a service here, you pay for an add-on here, right? All that costs actually add up and become significant. So if you think about commercial cards, right, they have a notion, they have a perception, but the fact is that they actually are an important working capital tool. They let you utilize your existing lines of business, both from a receive side as well as a pay side, right, to actually drive direct impact. They can improve your process efficiency, they can actually reduce fraud, they can improve your risk mitigation, and very often it can actually help drive incremental revenues as well. So something to think about. So I'll move back to the topic of working capital, right? And what are the needs of businesses today? And the four ones, and I think, again, if I go walk around, these are the four that pop up from the people who are talking about it, right? Automation, embedded finance, fraud, and cross-border. I think if I look at the sessions that are planned today and tomorrow, these are probably the four topics that actually hit across majority of them. So let's look at some of the things around automation. So around automation, if we look at companies between $250 to $1 billion, right, 50+% of them are looking for some sort of automation. They need automation. That's actually the top of mind for the corporate. Twice the number of corporates are looking to actually implement or increase in looking to implement some sort of a solution there. And it's a huge market. So for service providers, it's expected to be a $3 to $4 billion market in just AR automation alone. Embedded finance. Big topic these days. Everybody has, embedded finance as something in top of mind, whether it's a solution offering, or if it's a treasurer, or if it's a financial institution, right? And I'm talking to their heads. They're saying, hi, Abhishek, how do I actually work with embedded finance? What is it? How can I offer it to my customers? Where can I actually utilize it, right? Different segments have different needs around it. A small business is looking for it very differently. A large and mid-market is looking for it very differently. A small business is looking for it in terms of, hey, how do I actually do a one-stop shop where I can receive my invoices, I can pay out my invoices, I can receive my payments, right? How do I actually drive that? One plow. Large corporates are looking at it differently. They're saying, what's it for my ERP? Where do I need to have my customer touch points? Where can I actually integrate without additional modules, right? And what are those super apps that I can actually have so that my treasury department doesn't have to upset the existing rails? To that effect, if you haven't seen, Visa actually announced a partnership with the SAP this morning and Taulia specifically to help embed our virtual card automation into the SAP Taulia platform. So that's one of the big ways we are actually embedding finance tools and rails to help drive kind of some of these benefits forward. So risk and fraud, again, a big one that's there, everybody's top of mind. Increase in fraud rates at 30 to 50%, and everybody wants it, right? So it's top of mind for you, solution providers, corporates, everybody. Cross-border, a bunch of sessions today, how to look at cross-border. You know, it's one of those things where it's almost like if you want to send $100 somewhere, you kind of drop it into a pipe. You have no idea what will come out from the other side, right? And you don't know how many hands that money will pass through. So again, cross-border is like a big pain point and a big topic everywhere. So some of the Visa innovations around it, right? And the idea is not to say, hey, you should use Visa. The idea is to say, hey, these are questions that you should all be thinking about. These are areas that are top of mind, relevant, and you should be thinking about them. So around automation, we are looking at straight-through processing solutions. Around embedded finance, we are trying to think through what can actually facilitate payments, right? We have fraud solutions, you know, whether it's our decision managers or others, right, that we are actually doing. And obviously in cross-border, we've launched some very innovative blockchain-based solutions like B2B Connect and other cross-border solutions to help kind of provide a base of, or a toolkit for you as corporates, financial institutions, or service providers, right, to actually think about how do you deliver a seamless customer experience for your clients. So, like I said, you can access our growth capital index, you know, and if you fill out the survey, it'll actually benchmark for you as well. You can use the QR code if you want. I'll hold off for a second. Let me go back, so if anybody needs it. So yeah, so that's, I think, the idea, and I think to the discussion that you'll hear follow is that, you know, at the end of the day, we've looked at solutions for working capital, which is top of mind traditionally. I think the question for you all that I would provoke is, you know, when you go back, think about how do we actually look at newer age solutions which might suffer from a perception problem, or as a solution, as a fintech provider, right? How do I actually make a comprehensive offering that can actually provide a better, seamless experience to my customers? So that's kind of my spiel here, and then we have Q&A.